welcome. My name is Chris from ChristopherHole.com, and welcome to this week's podcast where we're going to be talking through and discussing the paleo diet and whether it's possibly the right diet for you, for me, or for anyone. We're going to look a bit broader as well, so we're not just going to be talking about the paleo diet, because I think a lot of people do get stuck in the paleo research and they don't tend to look a little bit further outside of the field. So we're going to dip into that. We aren't going to go into any great detail, but we're going to keep it as easy to digest as possible, all the information that is. But before we get into the bulk of the podcast, just like to quickly mention my social channels on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So Twitter is Christopher Hole or at Christopher Hole. Facebook is Christopher Hole Training, and Instagram is again at Christopher Hole. So if you'd like to come along to any of those, please do like and follow. It'd be great to see you there. Answer any questions that you may have. Also, alternatively, you can come to the website and go to christopherhole.com/join and join on to the newsletter, where we'll be sharing more information like this, bringing more videos together, bringing more education together to help answer questions that people may have to improve their health and their fitness. So back to today's subject, which is all about paleo or paleo Neolithic diets and whatnot. So first of all, we are going to cover what it is. Then we're going to look at some of the, I don't want to say flaws in the research, because the research is there. It's just most people don't tend to look at it. So I wouldn't say it's a flaw in the research. It's just more of a flaw in what people want you to know, and maybe what they want you to start doing, if you will. Then we're going to start looking at the body a little bit. We're going to look at alternative diet and just sort of compare the two, and then I'll summarize at the end. So what is the paleo diet? Well, it's the diet of our ancestors, and some people call it the caveman diet, if you will. It has two sort of central ideas or concepts that it tries to get across, which is we adapted to eat particular foods, which we'll cover a little bit more later on, and also to stay strong, healthy and fit, we need to eat like our ancestors, because there's this conception that our ancestors seem to have our health and fitness right, and at the moment we don't. Where there is some truth in that, we're going to expand on that a little bit further. So the basic diet of a paleo diet or a caveman diet is based on animals and their products, so the meats, the bone marrow, the organ meats, and also their products, so like the milk they would produce, so on and so forth. Then you've got vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, and the things they don't like to include are grains, cereals, and legumes, but we'll talk about those and we'll bring that into a little bit more of a perspective in a second. Now that we understand sort of what the diet is, kind of where it comes from, what we're going to look at now is a possible couple of flaws, as I mentioned, in what is advertised out there within the research as the benefits to paleo Neolithic diet. So we're going to look at some of those flaws. And probably the biggest one is the geographics. So when you're talking about the paleo diet, they were very much restricted to where they are in the world. Nowadays, we can get foods from across the other side of the planet. So for me in the UK, I could be eating fruits and vegetables from Brazil, and that could be with me in a matter of days. So with regards to the paleo Neolithic diet, that's one of the first things, or Paleolithic diet, that's one of the first things we have to focus on, is where they were in the world. So you've got, on the two extremes you've got the Inuit diet, which are sort of Alaska and Arctic Circle type areas. Now, they had high meat and fish, and they had low fruits and vegetables for obvious reasons. That's the only foods they could get their hands on at certain times of the year. So they're going to be very much influenced, and their diet is going to show that they ate lots of high meat, high fish, high animal product diet. Whereas on the other end of the scale, you've got the Kung tribe, and they are from sort of the south area within Africa, and they had the complete opposite. So they had high fruits and vegetables, low meat and fish. So first of all, to bring it into perspective, that's one of the things we have to focus on when we're thinking about diet. Is this diet right for me? Well, there's a lot of factors where it was right for other people, and those factors may not be suitable for us in the modern world. Then what we get is, as I've just mentioned, there's no single Paleolithic diet. What we also find, which is one thing I mentioned earlier, in the fact that they don't like to have grains, cereals and legumes, is that grains and cereals have been found in grinding tools and in stool samples up to 105,000 years ago. So you can go and find that information, and you can start to see, well, hang on a minute, no, they were consuming, or at least they were visible in their lifestyle, whether they were consuming them or not, but they were certainly visible in their lifestyle up to 105,000 years ago. So what you've also got is legumes have been found at Paleolithic sites all around the world. So you can start to see that there's a couple of flaws in what's being shared out there. And I think that's a big part of, even in the modern world, where sort of the diets and the trends and the fads come from. It's very much built on what people want you to hear, and not necessarily what the information is demonstrating from an objective standpoint, because there will always be pros, there will always be cons, there will always be those two elements to the diet. But what advertising does is it just enhances the benefits, if you will. But when you go looking for the drawbacks to it, that's what they don't want you to know. So it's wise to go and look for those yourself. So if they're talking about all these benefits, go and find what are the drawbacks to what they're saying, because it gives you a much more objective view. And as we go on through, we'll start to see that we can be a little bit more lenient when it comes to our diet, if you will. Because this whole thing about evolution, people say, certainly in the Paleolithic arenas, that what we had 10,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago is what we have now. Now, what we know from a study or an arena of science called epigenetics is that our body is consistently adapting to the environment around us. So what this kind of helps us understand is our body is adapting at all times. So as we go through generations and generations, as new foods come in, our body has the ability to adapt to them, if you will. So the one thing that epigenetics shows is that genes can't be switched on and off on their own. They need some sort of an environmental factor, and that's where the cell comes in, because in and around the cell there is an environment. It's very much an ecology, if you will. Now, if we're putting in certain foods, our cells will respond a certain way and we will get a certain gene expression. If we put in other foods, our cells will react a different way and we'll get a different gene expression. So we know that certainly from 10,000 years ago and to now, our body has been adapting and changing due to the environment that it's given, which is essentially the foods that we eat and the fluids that we put in our body. So over the past 8,000 years, as an example, we've developed an enzyme which can help us digest lactose. So there's just one example, and we can go on and on and on about the different examples that are there. But what we have to understand is that our genes aren't set in stone from first conception. They are constantly evolving and developing over time, and that's one of the big things that we need to understand. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about another popular diet. So this is another one that gets promoted again as another sort of very healthy diet that people should be following, and it's the Mediterranean diet. Now this diet is based on whole grains, fruits and vegetables, fish and oils. So there are some similarities. They're both whole food. So although paleo say don't eat grains and cereals and eat more in the way of animal products, nuts and seeds and things like that, essentially what they're saying is whole foods. Eat whole foods. Both diets say eat whole foods. Both diets also say eat fruits and vegetables. Both diets also say eating fish is a good thing. And the Mediterranean also has oils in there as well. So what we can now understand is that, one, eat both whole foods. Both say eat organic. Both say moderate meat and fish intake. Both help reduce risk of some chronic diseases, and both are better than the modern Western diet that we know today. So what we can see is that from the two different diets, we can get very similar benefits, and they're sort of constructed in a very similar way. So what this kind of shows to us is, as I guess a summary, give up the label. Just give up the label of the different diets and the different trends that are out there, and just stick to the consistent principles of eating whole foods, eating a plant-based diet, and moderating the amount of meat and fish, and drinking plenty of water. So as a very general principle concept of a diet, it's those three. It's eating whole foods, making sure you're eating plenty of fruits and vegetables. If you choose to eat meat, eat it moderately. If you choose to eat fish, eat it moderately, and drink plenty of water. Because our body is evolving and adapting to our environment through our epigenetics. We have the jaw and the teeth to eat all the different foods. So we know that from just studying our anatomy. We are evolving to digest certain foods, as I mentioned with the lactose enzyme, and all of our cells are evolving to receive those foods. If you go right down to the cellular level, they have little receptor sites on them, and they sort of connect in a bit like a lock and a key. Now, again, over time, epigenetically, our body is evolving to do that. So we have the ability to take in the different foods, we have the ability to digest the different foods, and we have the ability to use the different foods. So what, again, it all comes back to is giving up that label of I must eat this way, this is the best diet, and focusing on the principles of eating whole foods, eating plant-based, moderating animal products, meat and fish and so on and so forth, and drinking plenty of water. If you stick to those three principles, and I guess the fourth one of giving up labels, you're going to be in a much better place with regards to your diet and with regards to your health and your fitness. And it won't also put a stigma on the way that you eat with regards to other people. It's just a whole food, plant-based, drinking plenty of water, moderating meat and fish type of diet, if that makes sense, which to some degree sounds quite normal. Not I'm paleo, not I eat Mediterranean, not what other different diet there is out there. It's very much focusing just on the principles and not or the common principles, I should say, and not the sort of dividing labels of what people are trying to do, because essentially all they're trying to do is sell their product and sell their idea. So we just need to focus on the common principles that go with them all, and then we can start to gain more from that, if that all makes sense. So hopefully you've gained a little bit more in the way of an understanding of the paleo diet and how it maybe fits into the grander scheme of things. Hopefully you've gained some areas to go and further investigate. I know I haven't explained everything in great depth. I've sort of skimmed over the top of a lot of it, but hopefully it gives you an idea that you can go and explore a little bit further and gain a little bit more in the way of understanding for yourselves. So many thanks for listening. Hopefully this has been helpful. Once again, just to mention, I'm on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, which is at Christopher Hole Training, and Christopher Hole on Instagram. So please come along, like and follow. Alternatively, come along to the website, christopherhole.com/join. Join onto the monthly newsletter, where you'll be able to gain more information about this in further depth as well, because there will be more information coming out regarding cells, epigenetics, so on and so forth. So many thanks for listening. My name is Chris from christopherhole.com. I will speak to you in the next episode.